Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our monthly discussion, which provides a snapshot of where we are in terms of crime reduction in New York City. In a moment, you'll hear from the mayor, and then Chief of Crime Control Strategies, Lori Pollack, will go over our November crime figures. I'll tell you that in our ongoing mission to further reduce crime and keep all New Yorkers safe, the NYPD's highly effective targeted approach towards the real drivers of violence and disorder continue to yield very positive results. And increasingly, our efforts are supported by the full and willing partnerships of our communities, which not only make our city safer, it makes people we serve feel safer too. And as I always say, there is a distinction there. Right up front, I want to make sure I wish everyone who is celebrating a very happy Hanukkah. Last night, we lit the menorah down in the lobby here at police headquarters. We did it in conjunction with the NYPD Shamrim Society, which was founded in 1924, making it the oldest Jewish fraternal law enforcement organization in the United States. And it's holidays like Hanukkah and longstanding NYPD traditions like the menorah lighting that remind us of the incredible diversity of our police department and of our great city. And we recognize how that diversity brings us all closer and ultimately makes us stronger. Last night, during the ceremony, I said we were thinking of the 11 worshipers killed in the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh in October, about how their assailant fired indiscriminately into the crowd, targeting his victims simply because of their faith. That assault unfolded against the backdrop of a surge in hate-related speech and crime across America. Here in New York, too, we're addressing an increase in bias incidents, many of them against members of our Jewish community. Let me be clear. There is no place in civil society for such divisiveness and hate. The increased reports of criminal mischief, harassment, or assault here in the 5 boroughs concern us a great deal. None of it will ever be tolerated in New York City. I can tell you that our NYPD investigators, who make up the best and most robust hate crime task force in the nation, headed by Deputy Inspector Mark Molinari, they fully investigate every single complaint. And together, through a lens of trust and strength, I know we'll see these occurrences decrease. So in keeping with the theme, we will use Hanukkah's message of survival to reinforce our solidarity. And if anyone in this city of 8.6 million people knows of someone who has committed an act of hate against an individual or a group, who has any information that can help us in our investigation, we want you to reach out to the NYPD and make sure we get a chance to fully investigate it. It's about sharing responsibility for public safety and moving forward as one unified New York City. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner, I want to thank you for everything you just said. I want to also join in wishing everyone a happy Hanukkah and reminding everyone of the extraordinary work the NYPD does to protect people of all faiths in this city. And it's really something we should be very, very proud of. The attacks we've seen, most painfully the attack in Pittsburgh, remind us there is a lot of anti-Semitism in the world and we have to confront it. And one of the most important things we can do is show that the full weight of our government is there to protect the Jewish community, just as we have protected communities of other faiths when they're under attack. I want to believe that this era of hate being tolerated will soon end. But in the meantime, we have a job to do to show people the kind of vigorous response that's needed, and the NYPD has done an outstanding job. So thank you, Commissioner, to you and to all the men and women of the NYPD. As we talk about the month of November, I want to thank and congratulate all the leaders of the NYPD here in the room, because the NYPD has done it again, has once again done what a lot of people thought was impossible. You looked at last year, 2017, a record-setting year for lower crime. NYPD is starting to surpass even the record set in 2017. Take it against the backdrop of what has been done over these last years. 5 years ago, we said we would end the era of stop and frisk. If you compare 2017, the year 2017, to 4 years earlier, stop and frisk down 94% and crime down. We said that we could get a lot done with fewer arrests. In 2017, 100,000 fewer arrests in 2013, and crime went down. We see it over and over again, and I want to particularly note that one of the things that marked 2017 as an extraordinary year, a memorable year, an unbelievable year, was that for the first time since the 1950s, the NYPD was able to get homicides below 300. Well, as of midnight last night, NYPD's good work has paid off again. We are exactly at the same number we were on the same day last year. We are exactly on pace to repeat last year's extraordinary achievement, and that's something to celebrate. Chief Pollack's going to go into the details, but just looking at November 2018 versus November 2017, most important top lines. Major crimes down 5%. That month-to-month comparison, one year to the next, murder down 25%. These are further indicators that this police force just keeps getting better and keeps deepening the relationship with the community, which is providing the partnership, the information, the support the NYPD needs to get the job done. So there's a lot here to celebrate. I've said that neighborhood policing has been crucial. It's being proven more and more all the time. We know we're the safest big city in America. I want us to be the fairest big city in America. These facts, the report that we're getting on the month of November, prove that those two concepts are going together more and more. Safety and fairness are walking hand in hand in New York City. Just a few words in Spanish. El mes pasado, el NYPD batió sus propios récords al mejorar aún más la seguridad en la ciudad grande más segura del país. El plan de vigilancia vecinal está creando confianza entre los policías y las comunidades. Una relación cada día más fuerte y mejor. With that, I want to turn to Chief Pollack, who'll go into the details about the month of November.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our overall crime is down 5% for November. November set a new low for total index crime with a reduction of over 400 crimes, beating the previous low set in 2017. All 5 boroughs have seen a reduction in overall crime. Our November murders are down 5, 15 versus 20, a reduction of 25%. This November with 15 is now the lowest November on record. 15 murders tied with February for the lowest month this year. The only time there has been a month with fewer murders was also a February in 2012 when we recorded 12. 15 is the lowest number of murders recorded in any month with 30 days or more. August of 2017 is now the second lowest when we recorded 17 murders. Brooklyn finished November 7 versus 8, Queens 4 versus 4, the Bronx 3 versus 5, Manhattan and Staten Island recorded no murders in November. Shootings in November were up by 8, 56 versus 48, or 17%. 56 is the second lowest November on record. November 2017 with 48 was the lowest, and after last year, the next lowest was November 2016 with 65 shootings. Brooklyn accounted for 48% of November shootings, 27 versus 13, an increase of 14. The Bronx had an increase of 5 shootings, 15 versus 10. Manhattan was down 1, 8 versus 9. Queens finished down 8 for November, 6 versus 14. Staten Island recorded no shootings in November compared with 2 last year. Rapes this November were up 16, 141 versus 125, a 13% increase. 18 of the 141 rapes occurred prior to 2018, which is a 12.8 percentage. November 2017, we saw a similar trend of 11.2, or 14, that were reported prior to last year, 14 of 125. Robberies down this November, 11.8%. That's 1,057 versus 1,199, a decrease of 142 robberies, a record low for any November. Felony assault, down 9%. 1,472 versus 1,481, down 9%. Burglary, 895 versus 1,063, down almost 16%. The first November we have come in below 1,000 burglaries. Grand larceny, 3,665 versus 3,733, a decrease of 68 crimes, or 1.8% down. Grand larceny auto set a new record for November, 447 versus 473, a decrease of 5.5%. Transit crime overall is up slightly, 15 crimes or 6.2%, 257 versus 242. Housing overall crime down 9.5%, 363 versus 401, a decrease of 38 crimes. To recap, we have seen reductions this November in 6 of the 7 major categories, and this, like the mayor said, is with 22% fewer arrests this November, a decrease of almost 5,000 arrests. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Lori. Just on topic on crime? Questions? James? Thank you, hand halfway up.
Appreciate that. Is there any new information about this brutal beating that was in the Bronx?
All right, let's talk about, we're going to get to, Dermot's going to talk about individual crimes. All right, but just anything about the November crime numbers or the year-to-date crime numbers in the back row?
Down by borough.
Is that part of what we release?
Yeah, we do have that on the release.
Okay.
Okay.
Tony?
Pollack, there seems to be still a problem with homicides in the Bronx and I think Queens North. Can you address that? There seems to be sort of a nettlesome problem in those two sectors.
Well, the Bronx is up for the year, 14. They have seen a decrease, obviously, this month, 3 versus 5. We are committed to going after gun violators. That is, we work closely with our law enforcement partners to target gun violators. The data and human intelligence are extremely important in that endeavor, and it informs our deployment. So obviously, it's working.
Queens North, there seems to be some sort of situation there. I think they're up 100% this year.
They're not up 100% in murders. We can talk about this afterwards, but
Again, you had a couple instances in Queens North. You had that triple homicide that was domestic related. That really kind of skewed the numbers up there.
Thoughts or explanations about why burglaries are down November to November?
I think it's a couple of things. First and foremost, I think it's the NCOs and the steady sector cops. And I think it's the community working with the police department. And I also think it's the Detective Bureau concentrating on patterns. We're identifying them very quickly, and we're going after the people committing those patterns, and I think that's extremely helpful. And there's just one more, so I guess it's 3 things. There's more technology out there, too. Video is really helping us. Yep, James?
This one really is about crime stat.
You can try to sneak it in if you want, no problem.
About the rise in rapes, though.
Yeah, Lori can go into a little bit more detail, but just in general, this is something that we speak about every month, the increase in rapes. And we meet with the advocates 4 times a year. We're actually going to meet with them again in December. And it's an underreported crime. And I think the NYPD had a program. I don't know if you saw the advertising to help people feel more comfortable coming to us. It's Your Call advertising program that you saw that helped people come forward, and I think that's adding to the rise in rapes. Lori?
we are up 25% this year in rapes, 327, but we do have a 23% rise in reported rapes from previous years. So that is skewing the numbers a little bit. That's up from 17% the prior year.
So just to be clear, do we feel it's just because of a greater reportage, or do we feel there actually could be still more of an prevalence?
We don't have any solid data to say what exactly it is. We believe that the stigma has been removed to a degree, so people are much more comfortable, especially in domestic situations, to come forward and report rapes that are happening now and that rapes that have happened in the past.
Tony?
For both you and the mayor, you've sort of grafted community policing, neighborhood policing, and crime initiatives together as working in tandem to bring the crime levels down. But we talked about this before. Criminologists seem to say this. We can't really say at this stage what if neighborhood policing is that effective in driving down crime. But I think you had said that in the past that you were going to do a study or commission a study to find out what the effect is.
And I didn't ask Tony to ask this question. We have the Rand Corporation is going to do an evaluation. It's a 5-part evaluation. The first part of that evaluation should be done in June of 2019. It should take, the whole evaluation should take about 2 years, but the first part should be available in June.
But let me add, look, No one here rests on their laurels. Everyone understands we have to earn this progress every single month. And I think the NYPD is doing an outstanding job achieving these things. But there's clearly a community element to this. There's no question in my mind. And I want to see an objective entity like the RAND Corporation do the systematic study. But I also can say sometimes in life you get a lot of evidence and a lot of common sense points you in the direction. We didn't have this neighborhood policing approach in the past. Once it was implemented fully, it clearly contributed to the constant reduction in crime. And you've sat here for a lot of these press conferences. Year after year, month after month, crime keeps going down. And it is the information that our officers are receiving from community members that's a piece of it. The question before of why on the burglaries, why is there progress? Well, when you talk about identifying the patterns, a lot of that is getting information from community members who are coming forward who might not have come forward in the past and are willing to be more helpful in ways we've always needed them to be, but that took building trust. So I hear it from officers and from commanding officers around the city. I hear it from community members that people are much more likely to come forward now, offer information, and that's leading to more crimes being solved more quickly.
In terms of the hate crimes, do you have any new strategies that you plan to use to try to reduce those numbers?
Yeah, and again, a lot of that has to do with working in the communities. And just in the 9/0, we've had an increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes. So we're working with the NCOs. We're putting more house of worship cars out there. We're putting the strategic response group in there to increase our presence. And everybody knows I spoke about that in my opening comments about our hate crimes task force. And if we need put additional people in there, even if only temporarily, we'll do that. We'll put seasoned investigators in there to make sure we make these arrests as quickly as possible. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, you work very closely with Chancellor Carranza and the DOE. My question is, do these statistics include the DOE statistics regarding students who are involved in crimes against each other or against teachers?
Let the experts talk about how they do their methodology. Clearly, any crime community is a crime, whether it's by a student or anyone else. But talk about how you...
Any crime that's one of our 7 majors, and these are the ones that we count when we talk about CompSat, they are included in the numbers.
Crime-related question.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to ask, it's a 2-part question first for the Commissioner. How seriously is the NYPD conducting its investigation of the thumbtack attack on the controversial bike lane in Sunnyside? And for the Mayor, would you consider that a hate crime when someone attempts to injure innocent people going about their business on a controversial bike lane that you supported against the community board in that neighborhood?
I'll go first. That's not classified as a hate crime, but it is, and I think I'm a bicyclist. I think that's a particularly nasty crime. So we're doing our best. I think it's about a week old now. The Detective Bureau is actively investigating it. So anybody that has any information about that, I mean, it was a couple blocks long, throughout hundreds of attacks. And not only you're going to flatten people's tires, but you're going to get people seriously injured. So we are taking it seriously, and there's an investigation by our Detective Bureau.
It's a crime, period, and it's going to be taken very seriously and acted on. Look, there's been controversies for sure over bike lanes, and under Vision Zero, I've been very clear about the fact that the bike lanes that we've added are for everyone's safety, for traffic calming, for reasons that support the Vision Zero philosophy and make us all safer. We've seen, protests and controversy. I can't remember anything like this before, so it's a little early to judge. It could be. Again, I want to be very clear. There's any number of possible motivations, and that's why we have full investigations. But the bottom line is it's unacceptable. It's a crime, and I can say this about the NYPD. If anyone's been watching lately, their ability to find people, particularly for the reasons we stated before, more video, more folks in communities willing to come forward. It's a rare situation where they don't find the person who did it, and I'm confident they will.
Any other crime questions? Yeah. No, individual specific crimes. We're going to talk about that in a second.
I think you need to say crime stats.
Crime stats. Thank
Crimes.
you, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
Thank you.
That'll help
Clearing up
everyone.
Any confusion?
Yeah.
Any more crime statistic questions? All right, we'll go to a regular off topic here.
A follow-up on the Rochester Amber Alert case. Can you talk a little bit about where you picked up Robert Gonzalez and Joanne Coates and where he is being held now?
All right, Chief Shea will speak about that. Dermot?
Good afternoon. So earlier this afternoon, we took into custody the individual Robert Gonzalez. We also located the young girl involved in the incident. The young girl is being checked out at a local hospital. The ultimate plan is to return her to her family, and we will proceed with Robert Gonzalez. He's being held on a kidnapping charge that emanates out of Rochester, New York, and that'll be worked out in the courts when he returns back to face those charges. I'm sorry? They were both located in Brooklyn sometime this morning, late this morning.
Yep, front row.
I wanted to ask a question about the drone program. Have you ever used, has the NYPD, not you personally, has the NYPD ever used drone before in a pilot like this? And I mean, I just trying to get a sense if this is the first time. I know it was announced today, but if this is the first time drones have been used in any kind of form of policing or investigations.
I think they've tested them, but that was, on NYPD property somewhere. But Terry can talk a little bit.
No, we've never used it out on the streets yet. It's been tested on the Taro properties where we were earlier today, but we're rolling it out today. It took us a long time to put together the policies that we're utilizing, and as of today, we can use them in certain instances.
What was kind of the challenge in putting together the policy that you found?
Making sure that we weigh both privacy rights and safety concerns, so that we utilize them properly supervised. We had to make sure that our pilots were trained, FAA certified, so there's only limited people that can take it out. And then when we can use it, the situations, specific situations that we can utilize the drones at.
Yep.
Sure. What do you say to Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner, who was outside City Hall today? Says it's 4.5 years, nothing's been done, with no end in sight for the police officers who used the chokehold that ended in Mr. Garner's death.
So we have the first, not hearing, but there's on December 6th in the trial room. They're the first part of the proceedings, and we want to get this done. We do want to get this done. It'll be done sometime next year. Hopefully, it will be concluded. I know it's been a long time. We just got the okay from DOJ this past, I think, August, and we're proceeding, and we're working in conjunction. CCRB is prosecuting the case, and we're working in conjunction with them to make sure they do it as efficiently as possible.
What is Officer Pantaleo's current assignment?
He's on modified assignment, and he's working in Patrol Borough, Staten Island.
What is that when in?
He's got a desk job.
Pfeiffer from the MTA said, he talked about, he proposed sending his own people down to the subway to block turnstile jumpers backed by the police. What are your thoughts on that? Isn't that the NYPD's job?
Yeah, so I do have a lot of thoughts on that, being that I started out as a transit cop back in 1983. I think it's important to do as much as we can to control entry into the subway system. I think that's how we managed to reduce it to, I think it's 86 crimes a day, and is about 6 million passengers a day. We've, Eddie Delatorre, Chief Delatorre, will talk about the stats, what we've done so far this year. Our fare evasion efforts are increased. I do differ with Manhattan, the New York DA's office on one count, and that's the definition of who is a public safety threat. So when we do lock somebody up on a case-by-case basis, we do have a discussion with the DA's office to make sure that they are prosecuted, and we're successful about 50% of the time.
Okay, so in fact, last month, the month of November, we show a 25% increase in contacts at the gate. Contacts would include arrests, C summonses, which are criminal court summonses, and tabs. Last year at this time, we had 4,971 total contacts at the gate. This year, we have 6,248, that equaling a 25% increase. So what's happening now is because of our new policy, officers are free to make more arrests and spend more time on a platform instead of getting tied up with other arrests. And what we do is we attempt to identify the most persistent offenders that we feel will have the greatest impact on the public safety for those in the system.
So just, it's 6 crimes a day in the subway system with about 6 million riders. Yep, the back row.
This question is regarding the reintroduction of the Post Act, Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology. Last year, the council put forth this bill to have a little bit of oversight and, I guess, discussion about the potential use and acquisition of surveillance technology by the department. I guess drones might have been one of the items that they would like to review and have a debate about. Do either you or the mayor have a stance on that bill? I know last year both the police department and the mayor's office was opposed to it.
I know we did a lot of work with the council to make sure that we could come up with a compromise. John, I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit?
Don't be too excited, John.
So I testified before the council on that bill the first time. We were shown that bill by Councilman Gorodnick. We had a long discussion about a lot of the things that we would like to see changed in that to make it workable. When the bill eventually was brought up, none of those changes were in there. We have said that we're willing to look at any version of it that addresses our concerns. To put make a long story short, the concern was there is equipment that is used by undercover officers in dangerous situations against serious narcotics violators, organized crime figures, terrorist suspects, that there is a very good reason to keep the nature of which confidential. And the way that it was written very broadly said any technology that was capable of recording voice or video needed to be described and the limits of its capabilities and so on. And it just didn't seem reasonable for the safety of our people who are out there trying to protect New Yorkers. We'll look at anything that they come up with and reevaluate it.
And before we finalized our policy, we did work with the city council and we did work with the civil rights advocates to make sure it was an inclusive way forward.
For Touche. On the 9/0, there were a few different attacks on Jewish victims, including the child in the 9/0, another man who got his hat knocked off and he was punched in the 9/0, and then another man in I'm sorry, I forget the exact precinct. It was in Crown Heights, who also got punched while walking to synagogue. Wondering if you have any updates on that? And then, sorry, another question is if you have any updates on that 123 and the woman who was found burned. I know you're trying to piece together some of the last days of before she died.
I'll start with the hate crimes. The 9/0 has been a focal point. You forgot one. We had the incident yesterday where the Catholic Church had the statues knocked down. That was also in the 9/0. That case, we have put a picture out. It's a very clear picture. I would expect an arrest. We ask for anyone with any information on that subject to please call Crime Stoppers, the church. The incident where there's 2 adult males dressed in traditional garb standing and a male walks up and punches them. Within the last hour, we have apprehended that male. His name is Enrique Gireno. He's a male Hispanic, 32 years of age. Again, that's within the last 60 minutes, so we'll get you the information on the appropriate charges, but I'm happy to report that that is a case that hate crimes has now successfully closed. We have an adequate number of detectives in hate crimes. I will say that we have, just this week, pulled resources to make sure that everything that can and should be done is being done, and I'm confident that it is. The men and women of our hate crimes task force, day in and day out, do their job admirably. They have tremendous success, and I'm very confident that together with the patrol response, with the investigative resources that we're bringing to bear, we will really turn the tide here in what we're seeing. 1, 2, 3. Not much new to report from what was said last week with the incident with the female that was found DOA in the park. From the time that she was reported missing to the time that she was found, I said that we were trying to close that. I believe it was a 7-day gap. We have tracked her from Staten Island at some point, taking a bus to Brooklyn. She returns a short time later to Staten Island via bus, we believe. We have her on the block this whole time alone. We have her on the block of the park. I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but it all coincides with our timeline, and that's where we lose her. And to my understanding, we do not have a cause of death yet, a final cause of death from the ME, but everything that I said last week still holds true at this point.
Clarify, you said that she takes the bus to Brooklyn and then back to Staten Island. Is that on the last day she was seen?
That's on the last day that she was seen, yes.
Found?
No, if you recall, and again, I haven't looked at those dates today, she is reported missing. We believe that on the date she's reported missing, she takes some money from her grandmother, a small amount of money. That same day, she takes a bus. This is corroborated through electronic records, through video. She gets on the bus. She's alone. She takes the bus to Brooklyn. She spends a very short period, I'm talking minutes, not hours, in Brooklyn, and gets back on the bus heading to Staten Island.
Let's do one or two more on police topics, please.
Chief, there's a hate crime incident in the 7-0 last month, I believe, where a woman in the Church Avenue subway station was stabbed and called a racial epithet. Do you have any news on that case, where that investigation stands?
Not closed with an arrest yet. This is the incident where the woman was walking up the train stairs, unprovoked. We have an individual come from behind and attacks her, winds up stabbing her several times in the back with what we believe is a screwdriver. Something new is that we have recovered that screwdriver. In this incident, the woman initially did not even realize that she was stabbed. She went home, declined medical aid at the scene, went home, then had some difficulty breathing when she was laying in her bed at home, and then the ball really started getting rolling on our side. We have put a sketch out of that individual. We still ask anyone for any information. A bystander intervened, and we're thankful for the intervention of the bystander. When the bystander intervened, the attacker broke off the attack and went back down the platform. It's unknown definitively whether the attacker got on a train, the next train, or went out the other end of that platform. We are waiting for some forensics still to get back from the lab regarding the screwdriver in this case. We're working some leads in terms of the sketch, but at this point, no arrest.
The screwdriver, and what kind of forensics are you looking to take off it?
Anytime we recover an item such as that, we'd be looking for fingerprints, we'd be looking for DNA. I don't have the date of that.
Let's go, guys.
John?
Chief, earlier you put out a video of an assault in the Bronx. Here's the man who stole the victim's headphones. I mean, were they strangers, and was he just stealing? Was this robbery of headphones?
Yeah, I think it's a very small picture, but it's behind me here. And there is a video. I don't know if we're going to play the video or at least a small clip of it. Very disturbing video. This is on 183rd Street, right on the 4652 border. I believe it's the 46 side. You see an individual leaning against a van, and he is beaten pretty bad by this individual. I think this is extremely clear video, and I'm very confident we will make an arrest on this. I do not have a definitive motive yet. I understand the headphones down, but what this was over still needs a little work to see what this fight was over. This individual winds up going to the hospital, the victim, and is at present in a coma.
Unbelievable.
David,
really senseless attack.
David, you had a question?
So the NYPD works closely with OEMs on
We'll do all the
emergency
questions in a moment.
Let's go.
Yeah, he'll be here.
What led police to the girl and the...
I think we've proven over and over, our regional fugitive task force, our men and women, our warrants division are very good at what they do. And in any case where we need to find somebody quickly, we have a lot of tools at our disposal. I'm not going to get into exactly what techniques we used, but in a short period of time after getting this Amber Alert, working with Rochester PD and others, thankfully we were able to quickly apprehend this individual before the girl was injured.
Thank you. Just one more. Probably I'm going to regret this, but one more.
Last week you said that you and the police commissioner were meeting and were going to discuss the incident at the Staten Island.
Yes, we did.
Given you guys have watched it, what is your reaction? Do you think there needs to be any changes to security protocol or the people who need security after the ferry? And are you confident that this review is going to produce fair and objective results, given that it's being led by the two of the security entities that lead security at the
Well, let me start and pass to Commissioner. We, in fact, met not long after you last asked the question and looked at the video together. Obviously an unacceptable situation. And you saw the announcement that was made that security at not only the Staten Island terminal of the Staten Island ferry, but also the Manhattan terminal and on the ferries themselves was going to be reviewed fully by the NYPD to determine what needs to happen going forward. I have absolute faith in the ability of NYPD to determine what we need to ensure there's consistent security and safety at those two terminals and on the ferries, and we'll take whatever appropriate actions, and that's going to happen very quickly.
Chief Waters is leading the review. He met with DOT. I think he met with MSA also. As the mayor said, it's absolutely unacceptable the way it was handled by all three agencies, actually. We train our people with suspicious packages. This protocol wasn't followed. It is disturbing, but that's going to, every time something is brought to our attention, good changes happen for the good, and I'm glad we got a chance to see that, and we'll ensure that it doesn't happen again.
independent investigators should impact?
No, this is what we do. This is what counterterrorism does. We do this better than anybody in the United States. So I have all the confidence in Chief Waters that the review will be done right and the proper protocol will be established.
Why don't we take a quick break?
Wait, just let her
All right,
finish.
yeah.
Go ahead. Say again?
Does that incident have anything to do with the firing of OEM Commissioner Joe?
No, totally unrelated matter. Okay, let's turn over now. Yep. Good? All right, let me do an opening statement about the Office of Emergency Management. Let me turn on the microphone. Opening statement I want to do on the Office of Emergency Management. So there was a lot of confusion yesterday in the public domain. It was absolutely understandable. There was so much confusion. I want to set the record straight now, and I want to give people a sense of what happened here. Weeks ago, I approved a change of leadership at the Office of Emergency Management. And I want to be very, very clear. This has nothing to do with the storm. I know in the absence of specific information, some of you reported that. I want to tell you straightforward, that is a falsehood. That's inaccurate. I don't blame you for making an assumption. It's just not true. The decision was made well in advance of that. I felt, and others in the leadership of the administration felt for some time, that we needed to make some changes at that agency and we needed to get more out of that agency. We needed a more strategic approach. I think OEM has been a very strong organization when it comes to tactical work. We need more focus on strategy. And I want to say at the outset, both Commissioner Esposito and the leadership team at OEM and the people who work at OEM do a really fine job on behalf of the people in New York City. But we felt that more was needed going forward in an ever more complex world. We needed to see an approach that would modernize the agency and prepare it for the challenges ahead. Deputy Mayor Anglin and Commissioner Esposito had a conversation on Friday. That conversation, obviously, now we understand, involved a certain amount of miscommunication and misunderstanding. It was a conversation that did not go the way it was planned. In the heat of the moment, I think, because of the misunderstanding, a series of things went into motion. I had heard back later on Friday that it had been an emotional conversation, a tense conversation that obviously is not unusual when personnel matters are involved, but did not understand until Monday when more information was provided that situation had involved so much misunderstanding. Once that was clear, I met with Deputy Mayor Anglin, then met with Commissioner Esposito. Everyone had a chance to think about it, talk about it more. I had a second meeting with Commissioner Esposito, and we were able to come to a much greater understanding of how to proceed. There will be a leadership change at OEM. It will take place over time. As you heard last night, there'll be a national search for a new commissioner. But this is a transition we expect to take months. Commissioner Esposito will continue in his role in the meantime, along with his team. We are talking to Commissioner Esposito about other opportunities in the administration. So those are the facts. Commissioner Esposito served in that role for 4.5 years already. Again, in a big, sophisticated organization, there are times when you say you want new leadership for a variety of reasons. This is one of those times, with real appreciation for all that Joe Esposito has done for the city over the years, and with an open door for him to take on another role going forward. So national search underway. We'll report as we get to the point of hiring someone new on who that person will be. But in the meantime, I expect the operations of OEM to continue consistently as they have, and for that work to go on, and we will continue doing our work overall while we search for a new commissioner. Go ahead, Dave.
Mayor, did you have a conversation then recently with Deputy Mayor Anglin about, hey, you could have handled this a heck of a lot better, and is she in any trouble in your administration?
Look, I want to say, a perfectly fair question, but I want to say at the outset, when it comes to personnel matters, I'm sure you would agree, there's a certain amount of discretion I'm going to exercise. If the shoe were on the other foot and we were talking about your situation at your station or whatever, you would want discretion too. So I'm going to keep this broad on purpose. The conversation clearly involved miscommunication. When there's miscommunication, usually everyone's involved, like everyone has a role in it. I think there's just missed signals. I think there was an assumption of proximity to the storm, and that was not the case. And it could have been handled better all around, honestly. And when on Friday again, I got a report. It was emotional, it was tense, but again, I've gotten that report in plenty of other situations. Saturday goes by, Sunday goes by, no one's calling and saying there's any new information, not hearing from anybody with any additional specifics. It's not till Monday morning that I'm starting to hear in the public domain things I'm not hearing from anyone directly. And that's when it was time to cut through it and have a straightforward conversation. Everyone say, what's happening here? But again, after the air was cleared, it became pretty straightforward again. We were going to make a transition, but it was not going to happen overnight. It was going to take time, and we can do that the right way.
So then why was Esposito not considered for this transition? Why would he long-term not be the person you want?
I'm sorry, say again?
Why is Esposito not the person then long-term for this position?
Because, look, sometimes you can work with someone, in my case, I worked very closely with them over 4.5 years, and feel there were some really good skills, really good attributes, but there was also things missing that we needed for where we wanted to go. In the last 4.5 years, the world has not gotten any easier. It's gotten harder, it's gotten more complex. There's more I want that agency to do on a strategic level, and you choose the right person for what the mission is. So for where we want to go going forward, I was certain that we needed to go in a new direction. you can respect someone's skills and abilities, but also have the feeling that someone else is a better choice for the job going forward. That's what I felt. Yeah.
So on Friday, I know you said a lot of us made assumptions about what happened, but a lot of this was pretty well reported, and your office knew about it at least Sunday evening about what we were going to report. Did you send Laura Anglin in to fire Commissioner Esposito? And is that and is it true that you received a call from Esposito that you did not call?
No, never got a call from Esposito. And let me just say it very clearly, never got a call that I have any record of, never saw anything on my phone. He's never mentioned trying to call me. Maybe somehow there was a miscommunication within that, but I have no sense, no knowledge that he tried to call me. Again, we had two different conversations in person yesterday. In terms of this decision, as I said, this was made weeks earlier at my direction. And I know, around here people like to put things in black and white terms. I want to be clear. We decided we needed new leadership. Now, a lot of times we've talked to people and said, this role is not what we want going forward. And there have been times when people have said, hey, would you consider me for another role? Or sometimes we've already had in mind another role. I think that would have been a natural conversation on Friday if everything hadn't gone crosswise. When Joe and I sat down in the cool light of day, it immediately lended itself to that conversation. Were there other things that we could think about here? As we talked it through, it was clear the answer was yes, and that conversation is now proceeding. I think that might have been what happened on Friday if things had just been a little clearer. And there's been many, many hundreds of personnel conversations in the course of the last 5 years. This is really aberrant to me. I think this was a little bit like just somehow people really missed each other in a way I haven't seen previously. Please.
Since you were out of town, you were in another state for that, is it common for the mayor of New York City to, while he's away, send someone else to fire a commissioner?
The way it works, deputy mayors are the people that commissioners report to. And there's been plenty of situations where on any number of personnel actions, deputy mayors have been the ones to carry it out. There are times when I do that myself for a variety of reasons. Look, in retrospect, I do want to say, and I want to take this on myself, look, everything in the end is my responsibility. I made the decision, and I believe the way it was being carried out would be the right way. Obviously, something went wrong. I have to take responsibility for that. In retrospect, understanding and appreciating how long Joe has served this city, I think I should have said, wait a minute, even though there's perfectly appropriate for a deputy mayor to have the conversation, it would have been better for me to have it up front. I've had that conversation with people over the years. It's not something I have a problem doing, but I think that it would have been smarter to do it that way.
Did you apologize to him?
I had a good conversation with him.
It sounds like you met with Mr. Esposito twice yesterday.
Correct.
So something that I had heard as well, and that after the first meeting at Gracie Mansion, his future sort of, to him at least, still remained kind of murky as to what was happening. I guess if this was in the works for weeks and you knew that Deputy Mayor Anglin was going to have this conversation with him on Friday, why did it take 2 meetings with Mr. Esposito to clear up?
Look, I want to clarify. This is a very large operation. Decision was made. The deputy mayor was tasked with having the conversation, which is consistent with her purview. I was not focused on the tick-tock of exactly how and when she was going to have it, et cetera. Under normal circumstances, that conversation proceeds in a very straightforward manner. People are professionals. People are mature adults. You lay out, here's where we're at. Everyone understands. Everyone figures out the next steps. Something went wrong in that conversation. That's the bottom line. I'm not going to get into all the back and forth of the different conversations. This was an emotional situation. When people are emotional, sometimes people have to catch their breath, have to have a chance to think. We had a good first conversation. We had a productive second conversation. We all agreed where we were going. So it's as straightforward as that in the final analysis. Okay, Gloria.
Mr. Mayor, can you elaborate on what are some of the things that Commissioner Esposito is not going to be a good fit for? You said there were some things that were great, other things that weren't.
Look, as I said, I think there's a lot of skill and a lot of experience he brings, and I thought he was particularly strong on the tactical side. But this is an agency that I think is going to have to do more and different things going forward. I think it's going to have to take a more strategic approach. I think it's going to have to deal with a lot of subject matter it hasn't had to deal with so much in the past because of the changing nature of the threats we face. And I just felt it was time for new leadership after a variety of experiences that I've had. So that's the bottom line. I'm not going to get into the intricacies because I want to respect that it's a personnel process. But what will be clear is, as we select a new leader, we're going to delineate why we chose that person and where we expect that person to take the agency.
Is there a specific reason why that change for the agency is coming now? I mean, Joe's been at the head of that agency for years now. Has anything changed in terms of?
I think the bottom line there is, as we went into a second term, laying out an approach to a second term, giving each agency head a chance to perform, seeing how that went, and coming to the conclusion that it was time to make a change. Go ahead. Yeah.
Two questions, actually. First of all, why didn't you fire him yourself?
I just said, I think in this situation, the normal thing from my point of view, because someone reports to everyone, all the commissioners report to deputy mayors, that is normal and standard operating procedure. In retrospect, I want to take on myself, given who Joe is, what he's achieved, I think it would have been right for me to do it.
A second question I have is, I know you said that you thought it was time for new leadership and that you wanted to go in a different direction. Could you be more specific, like what did he do wrong that you wanted to replace him? What
Right, so it's, again, personnel matter. I'm not going to go a lot into that. I'm going to be very clear with you. I'm a little confused why, it's not about you personally or this specific question, but the broader tone I've heard over the last 24 hours. Sometimes you could think someone is a good person who's done a lot of good work and has strengths, but you still are looking for something else. It's just human life. I think if you just stand back and think about that sentence, you probably can think of any number of situations where you say, well, someone's good, but you need something else for what the mission is going forward.
Isn't interested in being data-driven?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we need something.
I'm confused about what you think the new skills you're looking for in the next person.
Again, I'm only here to tell you that after careful consideration and almost 5 years of working with him and that agency closely, because in those situations where I particularly had to work closely with them, those were pretty intense experiences, I came to a conclusion. Now, I have to make decisions about leadership all the time. We've had a lot of continuity in the administration, and I'm proud of that. But I have to make decisions all the time about what we need at any given moment. It's a team. We have to keep building our team. We have to keep responding to new challenges. I came to the conclusion we had to go a new direction. It's as simple as that. Yes?
What sort of job are you imagining for him in the administration when he transitions out of OEM?
We've had a discussion, I'll keep it broad, because again, this is a personnel matter. I'm not going to go into specific titles, but we've had a discussion about different types of things we need in the administration that might fit him. But that's all I'm going to say right now. No, obviously he has a broad set of skills. He's done different things. I don't go into personnel deliberations like this. Sure.
You've known, Esposito, Commissioner Esposito was in the department for many years. He was the highest uniformed officer for 13 years during 9/11, and through all the aftermath of that, you knew him. What was your reaction? When did you find out about his being sort of ushered out, and what was your reaction?
Over the weekend at some point, and I have a lot of respect for Joe Esposito, and it's hard to call him Joe because he was chief of department for such a long time. I met him way back in 1994. He's an integral part of how we reduce crime over the last 24 years. So Joe's a friend, but personnel decisions are made, and you have to abide by them.
Were you disappointed to hear that?
I'm not going to talk about my personal feelings. We have a city to run.
So I'll take a few more, but then again, want to just say up front to people, we're going to be taking off topic on other things too, and so people get to decide what they want to talk about, but we have a limited time. Go ahead.
Mayor, Joe Esposito aside, what are some of the new challenges from an emergency management perspective you see New York City facing?
I think that, just in the last 5 years, the threat of climate change has increased, the threat of terrorism has increased, the shape of terrorism has changed and become, unfortunately, more multifaceted. I think there's a host of things going on. And, we recognize that things are happening faster. And we're going to have to not only respond tactically, but have a much more refined approach to getting ready for potentially multiple problems simultaneously.
Do you see OEM handling climate change issues going forward?
The result of climate change? Sure. There's plenty of history of that. That's what happened with Sandy. Okay, Melissa.
Mayor,
Two questions if I can. Why did weeks go by between when you made the decision that you were going to make that change and when it actually happened?
Yeah, look, to me, that's often the case, that you come to a strategic decision, but there's a lot of other things going on, and there's a time when you decide, or the people involved decide to implement. I don't know how to interpret. You've observed New York City government a whole long time. I still think it's very hard for all of you observing to understand that when you're talking about an organization this big, we have 380,000 employees and we have a $90 billion budget and so much going on every day. Sometimes I feel like the questions I get are, why are things not linear? They're not linear because of the sheer complexity of what goes on. There's any number of times we make a decision in principle, but how and when it is implemented is based on a whole set of other factors.
I'm just wondering, was yesterday the first time you considered keeping Joe Esposito on in some other capacity? And is that part of the reason that subject coming up for some of the...
That's, to me, basically across-the-board reality, that if there's a situation where someone isn't working out for one role, there's always that conversation if people want to have it, but for a very few situations where something truly unacceptable has happened, right? This was not that, obviously. So that's a conversation that I think often just organically occurs, something I would certainly have been ready to engage in. But again, I think the miscommunication derailed that. Okay, again, I'm going to say we will be here a few more minutes, so choose what you want to talk about, this topic or any other topic. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just two questions related on the OEM thing. I just want to clarify the discrepancy between reports that Esposito was trying to reach you this weekend.
Again, I check my phone a lot. I have no record of a phone call. He didn't say to me when we sat down yesterday twice, I tried to call you. Maybe something just didn't get to me, but usually someone like him who has my cell number calls or texts, I didn't get one.
So you had no knowledge that he was trying to reach
No.
you?
Would have called him.
The other question was just kind of the notion, the hindsight notion of firing him yourself. Just given his long history, and my understanding was you had a fairly good relationship with him. Why did it not occur to you until after the fact that would have been the right way to do it?
Again, there's a lot going on, and there's times when you sort of stop and think very, very carefully about something, and I think if I had done that, I would have put two and two together. I can't describe to you how many decisions we're making all the time, and now, in the cool light of day, it makes all the sense in the world. I should have just done it myself. So I take that on myself. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, what was the intended topic?
What was what?
The topic of Friday's meeting was Deputy Mayor.
I think, without getting into a lot of detail, apparently, and this is something I was not aware of until after it happened, there were two different meetings with two different topics. But again, I'm not going to go into this a whole lot more, guys. Deputy Mayor, we had a conversation. We agreed on a course of action. It was her job to implement it. Something went wrong in the communication on all sides. Willie, and then a couple more over here and we'll be done.
Police Commissioner, what was your involvement in this discussion of taking OEM in a new direction?
I was limited. It was very limited. It's OEM it's a separate agency. As far as the future of OEM, I'm not involved in that discussion.
Not at all. So let me ask the mayor, if you're deciding on changing in a significant way how OEM functions, which is an agency that works extremely closely with the police department and is essential in cases of emergency, terror attack, etc., why would you not consult the police commissioner and have
Again, after 5 years of working with OEM, 4.5 with Joe Esposito and his team, I had a very, very substantial body of knowledge. I had been through all sorts of scenarios with them. I had compared notes in real time with other leadership of the administration, other leadership of agencies. I had plenty of information to go by. Okay, we're coming over here. A couple more. You haven't had your shot.
Different topic.
Please. Can you believe it?
We had a story on New York One, I don't know if you saw yesterday, about Mike Ryan, the executive director
Yes.
of the DOE, taking paid trips to conferences that were paid for by the company that makes the ballot scanning machines. What are your thoughts on the appropriateness of that, and should there be any consequences?
I was surprised by that. we've all come up in a time where it's quite clear that if a vendor does business with your agency, be careful. I think that needs to be looked at very carefully. I don't know the details. I haven't seen the specifics. I haven't heard his side of it, but I do think the notion of accepting something from a vendor, that's a very dicey area. It should be looked at very carefully because it's a very sensitive area, and one that there's been a whole lot of coverage in over the years of the sensitivities there. So I think that has to be looked at very, very carefully.
So another topic, unfortunately, sorry everybody, but this relates to the chairman of the Transportation Committee, and the City Council made news twice in the last couple of days. One is he's calling on you to build 100 miles of protected bike lanes every year. Currently you build about 25 miles. And he's calling on the police commissioner to create an entirely new unit of enforcement officers strictly for bus lane enforcement. So I'd like to ask you guys both about those efforts.
Well, we obviously are continuing to build a lot of bike lanes, and it's a high priority for the administration. On the question of enforcement, I've said very publicly we intend to do more, and we need to do more on bus lane enforcement. It's clearly, Again, what I said, I know you would never misquote me after all these years. We have been, I like to go by actions first. We have been steadily increasing the number of bike lanes, including in areas, as you noted earlier, where there's controversy. We intend to continue. The number, the amount, we will always report what we think is needed and can be done in the time frame we have. But the directional reality is quite clear under Vision Zero. On the question of the bus lane enforcement, we have to do more, we have to do better. I have heard loud and clear the voices saying the buses are going too slow. Commissioner and I have talked about it. We intend to find ways to intensify and improve our efforts to clear out those bus lanes so we can get the speeds we need. Okay, one last, go ahead.
Mayor, also on a different subject, but one we've talked about a lot, your emails. I just want to know from you, what's your policy generally when you receive an email? Do you save it? Do you delete it? Does it depend on what the email is? And do you expect that there might be more emails between you and Jonah Recknitz that weren't part of the FOIL, but that might come out in court?
I don't have a clue on the last piece. I stopped contact with this guy the second I heard of his really inappropriate actions, and that was a long time ago. So the vast majority of what I do is on government email. It's all preserved. And if someone reaches me, if someone sends an email and says, can we talk? I'll call them up or whatever, fine. But if someone starts into any content, what I do is switch it over to government email. So and look, and the other thing that's very important to say is since all of this transpired, the approach to email is very different than at the beginning of the administration. We do a lot less and are a lot more careful, having learned from all these experiences.
You don't routinely delete emails that come into your government because your
government side is all preserved. No, but the government side is all preserved. Thanks, everyone.